In this video, I'm going to walk you through how you can track and measure your progress so you know for certainty that you are on track and on pace to hit your fitness goals. Whether it's an aesthetics-based goal where I'm building muscle or losing fat, whether it is a performance-based goal and you are tracking specific strength, speed, or athletic related numbers, or if you're simply just focusing on longevity and you want to make sure that specific health markers, your sleep, your stress, your digestion are better. I'm going to walk you through how I track that, how I track that with clients, and how you can track that as well with either qualitative or quantitative ways. So let's dive on into it. So we're excited to do this one. It's not as sexy, but at the same time, it's simple and simple wins. And if let's say you're at a job and it's a sales job, and they're like, how many calls did you make? Like, I don't know. Like, what was the close ratio on your calls? I don't know, right? Any job that you have, you got to track your metrics. If you don't know your metrics, you're just guessing. What gets measured gets managed. And so make sure and stay at the end of this video. I'm going to link down to the tracking documents that I have. There was one for the nutrition one. This is going to be a little bit more detailed that you can utilize for anything biofeedback and recovery related. So that's down below this video as well. But as I mentioned, what gets measured gets managed. If you don't have eyes on it, if you don't have a way to track it, if you aren't measuring it, you're going to lose focus on it. You'll lose awareness of it. So if we have data around things, we can make data-driven decisions. And that's what this is all about. So you might be asking, well, what should I measure? That's why we're here. What should you measure? If you remember back to the triangle of priority video a couple videos ago, we went over the three types of goals that people have within a fitness health related space: aesthetics based, performance based, and longevity based. So within each of these, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at specific things. Can you look at all of them? Definitely. Do you have to look at them all of the time? I would say for that, way to kind of think about this is almost an executive dashboard. So if you are in a maintenance phase and you're in a really good spot with your health, you might only need to look at one or two things numerically. But if you're really trying to dial something in, I might dive into the data a little bit more so that we can really start to make changes and pivot or double down and optimize where that makes sense. So if we dive into this first one, measuring aesthetic-based progress, there's quantitative ways to track and measure this. I would say the scale and measurements are very numerical based. Typically, it is subjective, but you do see changes happening on the scale. It's numerical. You can measure that. You can see measurements. It's numerical. You can measure that. And the thing that I like to say about aesthetic-based goals is that you want to look at as many numbers as possible because sometimes the scale doesn't go down. Sometimes measurements don't change, but photos change. And that would be a qualitative way to look at things. If your clothes are fitting differently, if photos are saying something different, that's progress because ultimately you're chasing a feeling, not necessarily a destination. You might get to your dream weight and not look the way you want, but maybe you look the way you want and you're not at your dream weight or dream size, right? So there's a little bit of subjectivity to this. Now, measuring progress for performance related goals is a little bit easier because, well, it's numerical. It's very easy to say, cool, that is what we are focusing on. And so a quick qualitative way to look at this from a performance standpoint is like, how are you feeling? If you look at the end of the week, end of the day, how is my training? If I'm seeing this in someone's tracker and it's 99999,337, well, what happened on these days, either nutritionally? Typically, it's tied to sleep, right? This is just an example, but it could be tied to sleep. Oh, that's why performance was bad. Maybe there was something happening in their life where stress was a little bit higher, right? There's a number of things that can impact it. If we know where training took a dip, then we can go and be kind of a detective and say, well, why was that? What was happening? What was the case with that? Typically, if you're looking at performance-based metrics, you're going to want to look at quantitative data. And this is a great example of this. So using a third-party app, anytime I'm training with clients, we've got a training app that is pulling in all the data that we put in, and then we're able to go and look, okay, how did this performance go over these 5 weeks? So this is a good example, barbell bench press, 5-week split. This is something that I have, and you can see 5, 5, 5, 5, and you see me progressing in weight. So great. Now I'm progressing. Next week, boom, I did even more reps at more weight. Boom. Next week, week 3, I took a dip. I remember this week specifically, it was snowing and super icy in Seattle. And I was just kind of gassed and drained from the day before where I had done max effort deadlift. And I see it in my performance. So now I can go and look, oh, okay, I took a dip here, but then the next week I bounced back 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, 5, 4, 4. So I've progressed over the course of 5 weeks, but I saw where a dip happened and I can go and deduce what led to that. That's going to help you from a performance standpoint. If you're playing basketball, if you're jumping, if you're sprinting, if you're running a marathon, right? You're going to have different things that you are focusing on, but you got to be tracking those things. Otherwise, you're just guessing. You don't know if you're actually progressing. And if you aren't progressing, what's causing that? What needs to be focused on to make you start to progress? Measuring longevity based progress. So, qualitatively, this is where you are saying, okay, it's not a specific binary 1 or 0. You might be looking at your sleep, hunger. These are just a few examples that I'll do with clients: digestion, energy, stress levels. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how was it for that day? 10 being amazing, 1 being terrible. Well, sleep might have been bad on these days. Well, what happened? Were you up playing video games? Were you up scrolling? Were you up working? Maybe it was something out of your control. Maybe it was something you ate. Well, now we can go and address those things. Let's say your digestion is really poor on this day and this day. Well, were you eating something that you're allergic to? Were you eating too much? Were you eating too little? Were you really stressed? Sweet. We can go and look at that. We have qualitative ways to track biofeedback, to track recovery. This is one of my favorite ways to do this. If you have an app, or not an app, a device like a Whoop, if you have an Aura Ring, a lot of my clients will get those too. I use a Whoop. So I'm able to go and see, wow, what is my, I'll even zoom out just so you guys can see this a little bit more. What is my recovery like? Okay, I had a 96% recovery. That means my sleep was really good. That means I am ready to go and push it in the gym because I have this data to look at. This red right here, this would have been right after Christmas. You know why I was red? Because Christmas Eve, I had some alcohol. I had some cookies. I didn't sleep as well. So my recovery took a dip. A couple of days later, or like a week later, boom, back up towards 100%. Now I can go and understand what led to that. That's why this is so important. I can look at my strain. I can see how hard I was training on these days. I can see the undulation of that: up, down, recovery day, training day, recovery day, training day. And there's so much technology out there that if you need to really be looking at your sleep and you're not, get hooked up with one of these, because this will transform how you look at fitness, nutrition, and everything as it relates to your health. A few things that I'll have you also consider: there are a number of things to look at when it comes to health. Some of them do start to get into clinical things that you are looking at. I'm very much looking at things from a fitness perspective, but libido, stools, skin, mental health, clinical markers. It could be your blood pressure, could be your insulin levels, could be your blood sugar. That's where you want to work with a specialist, a doctor, someone who can really dive into that with you and has the pedigree and the, not, I don't want to say ability, what's the word I'm looking for? They have, you guys will know what I'm talking about. Like, they have done the schooling and they are licensed to be providing that kind of service. Inflammation is another really good one. If you got inflammation in your joints, inflammation in your gut, that's all stuff that can be looked at. And this is all stuff that I would put in that biofeedback category, where you're saying, okay, I did this for a week with my nutrition, with my training, with my sleep. It impacted these things. Okay, based on my libido over the course of 3 months, based on my mental health, based on my skin. I'll give you a couple of examples from myself. I finished a training block, 5-month training block doing it. What was it? It was High Rocks. My skin was atrocious. I had giant zits all over. My fiance was like, "What is going on?" My hair was super greasy, and I was training 2 times a day, was going through some family stuff, death in the family that was impacting my stress levels, and then I'm training really hard. Well, that skin was a clear tail sign that I was not recovering. There's been times in the past where I train in a period where maybe I just need to get some sleep and I just try and push through because I'm trying to go. And then all of a sudden my mental health gets into a point to where I'm just so stressed that I have to shut down. Right? Those are all signs and feedback. Another good mental health example would be motivation to train. There's times where you feel great, there's times when you don't, and I would say majority of the time you need to go to the gym and just bite the bullet and say, all right, I'm not motivated to do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But if you do this enough times, this is what I call walking up to the fence. There's a gray area for when you maybe do need a recovery day, and you won't know what going off the edge of that cliff or what walking up and touching that fence is unless you push yourself beyond that and see, is this a day where I actually did need rest, or is this a day where I was just being kind of mentally weak and needed to just suck it up and get the work done? A really good saying that I like is, when it comes to training, 10% of your days are going to feel amazing. 80% of the days are going to kind of feel the same. Like, all right, I'm going to get it done. 10% are going to feel like trash, right? And you can partition this out however you want. But ultimately, it's that 1 out of 5 day or that 1 out of 10 day where you don't feel like going, everything in your body screams, I shouldn't or I can't. But then you do that. That's where you see what you're capable of. Now, I say all this because there's times where you shouldn't go and you need to listen to your body. But until you've gone up to that wall, you won't really know if you're listening to the weak side of your mind or if you're listening to the intuition side of your mind. So, with all that said, leave a comment down below if you got any questions. If you got any comments, check out the last video in this series. It is the 5 stages of mindfulness. This is one of my favorite ones because it helps you get a lot of awareness as to where your mind is so that you have a good mindset, so that you have good mental performance, so that you can get your mental health into a place where you are performing 10 out of 10, firing on all cylinders and everything else. Thanks for watching. My name is Paul Klingen. I'll catch you on the next Return of the Athlete video.